Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Data Enhancement and the Evolution of Marketing Data Platforms. Thank you so much for joining us today. Right now, I am going to go through a little bit of housekeeping, the introductions, which takes 5 minutes, give or take. I speak fairly quickly, and then we want to get to our main event, the presentation. You'll be hearing from 2 different speakers today, and during the presentation, at any point, if you have a question for either of the speakers, we'd love to hear from you. So please use the live Q&A module at the right of your browser to enter questions at any point during the presentation. A little bit about CMSWire. We were founded in 2003. We publish a wide range of editorial contributors on 3 primary topic areas: digital customer experience, the digital workplace, and information management. Today's sponsor is ARM Treasure Data. You'll be hearing a little bit more about them when I introduce you to our 2 speakers today, but you can also find out what ARM Treasure Data has been up to by looking at the widgets on the upper right. There are some resources there that you can read up on. There we are. Let's put some faces to names. I am Siobhan Fagan. I'm the managing editor of CMSWire, and it is now my pleasure to introduce our 2 presenters today. I'm joined by Steve Letourneau. He is a data-driven customer experience strategist from Treasure Data, an enterprise software company that develops a customer data platform, more commonly known as a CDP. CDPs help marketers collect, unify, analyze, and activate customer data so they can develop richer, more personalized experiences with each of their end customers. And joining Steve, we have Mike Danley, an enterprise architect from Acxiom, which provides data-driven solutions that enable marketers to better understand their customers to create better experiences and business growth. A leader in customer data management, identity, and the ethical use of data for more than 50 years, Acxiom helps thousands of clients and partners around the globe work together to create millions of better customer experiences every day. And with no further ado, at this point, I'm going to hand off to Steve.
Great. Thank you, Siobhan. Thanks, CMSWire, Mike, Acxiom, Treasure Data, and everyone in the MarTech and AdTech world today. Welcome. And we just want to kind of walk through a little of our approach of a data-driven customer experience. And some of the focus items we're going to talk about is unifying customer data, enhancing it for the right data insights, talking about scalable data platforms and how they've evolved through time of the marketing evolution, and also the sound data management foundations, like how do we actually talk about data quality, data strategy, and other topics like that. So feel free, as Siobhan said, to continue to post up as you go. But I kind of wanted to start as how did we get here? So as when we talk about marketing data platforms, we know that in the days of print or mass media of the Don Draper days of marketing, we then moved into a relational marketing in the 90s, which led to now the 4th industrial revolution. And so marketing has followed those industrial revolutions over time. And I wanted to share a little bit of a quote from Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. The 4th industrial revolution is characterized by a range of new tech that are fusing the physical, digital, and biological worlds, impacting all disciplines, economies, industries, and even challenging ideas of what it means to be human. And what I love about that quote is brands and marketing should always remember that humans are the key to their success, and that maintaining that customer at the center of their mission is critical to be relevant in the marketing world as well as in their product and services. And as you can see on this slide, but we're moving into that 4th industrial marketing world, we're going to start seeing a data-driven, AI-enabled, as well as marketing automated on a per se to actually automate that customer experience as triggers, as different response, and data is actually pulled to consistent customer profiles. So we're going to kind of deep dive a little bit further as we move down, but I thought it'd just be a good hit to kind of give you where we're going, how do we get here. And so as we follow that, we talked about relational marketing, CRMs or marketing databases in the 90s, very PII focused, very centric, really first time where the brands began to bring in consumer data and recognize the value of it and tried to connect relationally with consumers, not just through mass media and product and service, and not transactional, but actual relational. And from that rise, we see something happen in the recent future, Mike, DMPs, right? We thought data management platforms meant that it would actually manage maybe all of the data. And sometimes I like to reference as a digital marketing platform instead of what the current name is. But what we saw here was kind of a shift of pushing audiences and digital connections as that moved. And we saw devices impacting that, social platforms. So again, the evolution of industrial and tech moved the marketing space as we move forward. And what I think is interesting is, and I think, Mike, you shared about this, when we look at kind of the next evolution, that rise of a CDP, we see CRMs heavily focused on PII, mostly direct mail and email, then moving into digital, which is focused on, I would say, mostly onboarding and media and advertising focus for conquest and targeting. And now we have something we're calling CDP, customer data platforms, right? Where it's actually starting to bridge all of that, all those platforms coming into one area and being able to activate through there. So kind of wanted to hit this topic right here, Mike. And as we look at this slide, you know, we see certain areas, and we know CDPs are very broad, and we'll hit a little bit deeper on there. But, you know, at one point, DMPs were the one-time solution to solve the world's problems in marketing. At least that's what everyone thought they needed one. And we know the big marketing cloud companies kind of really took that under their wing. And as I said, it kind of moved into media. Mike, can you share a little bit about DMPs and what you felt from your point of view at Acxiom, what they were for, and maybe some of the key use cases you think they still are used for as cookies are still around?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I think, you know, before I get there as well, you know, you look at the progression you showed, you know, of media over the ages, so to speak. And, you know, it's gone from broadcast to trying to actually talk to an individual or person, right? And, you know, CRMs came into play in a time where it was a little bit simpler actually to do that. You know, the number of channels and technologies at play were smaller, and you know, but it still was a very channel-focused experience. And you know, DMPs came along with this idea that, you know, we can reach and personalize messages and content to our customers using third-party cookies, right? So, you know, whether they're, you know, out on an ad network or publisher site or a partner website. Just being able to actually reach those customers with relevant messages, retarget them, you know, and do other use cases became very relevant. You know, to Steve's point, from Acxiom, you know, helping clients through this journey, we've seen many cases where, you know, DMPs at the time were touted as the answer to all our problems, right? And we as an industry seem to always kind of lock on to things as a silver bullet or an answer to that problem. But, you know, DMPs have struggled in adoption that I've seen. You know, I think it kind of goes back to the idea that to do all this correctly and to really kind of go towards what CDPs are driving towards, which is a channelless experience, you really have to focus on the customer and who they are as a person, and that requires first-party data, ultimately. You know, DMPs have suffered some adoption because everything is anonymized, and, you know, it's, well, valuable, you know, as things have matured, and now we have intelligent tracking prevention coming up and the blocking of the third-party cookie, wide-scale, you know, its relevance has diminished a bit, and CDPs, you know, have started to evolve to take on some of that role. As you can see here, you know, going from first party to second and third party, CDPs really kind of start bringing all that together into that omni-channel or even channelless experience for their customers. And, you know, it requires not only bringing together known data, but being able to connect those anonymous interactions over time to known individuals behind the device or cookie, right? And make that experience personal.
So, Mike, it sounds like as this technology came in, there were use cases, let's just say finding lookalikes in the digital area, customer suppression as they pushed their data out, or frequency capping of how many times media is actually pushed to an individual or a cookie. Do you think that one another reason that it's also diminished is just the ROI or value? Like clients, to your point, see the media spend as obviously an entirety, a huge budget of the marketing side, but the value of, are they getting the conquesting? And it hasn't really established an essential customer experience, right? I feel like this is where the DMP was really focused on media acquisition, targeting, retargeting, but not really how does the customer experience play into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think DMPs really ultimately kind of drive ad tech, right? And to your point, it's a lot about managing prospect acquisition use cases and lookalikes. And so, you know, they definitely have value in that space. But again, you know, with some of the changes coming in our industry, it's becoming less clear, you know, how they're going to fill the gap there and do that. And the great thing about CDPs is that you can actually take that first party data and do a lot of the same use cases, even though they were originally kind of centered around collecting first party data. And the thing about them is that they are, you know, most CDPs come along with a tremendous number of out-of-the-box integrations like treasury data. And these integrations are MarTech and AdTech, right, which speaks to the fact that, you know, trying to combine those two worlds to drive a customer experience, because ultimately the customer doesn't really care where they're coming in, right? They want to have that same seamless experience with you as a brand, no matter where they come from.
Mike, that's a great point. So as we move into this automation, I think that's one of the other areas where the data is all living there, first, second, third party data, digital data, response data, you know, being able to then action off of that in real time, right? There's a lot of great use cases. But one of the things I'm going to read real quickly is CDP Institute. So for those that are on here and still don't have all the information you want to do about CDPs or evaluating those things, CDP Institute is a great play where most of the newcomers to the market in this new category. But because it's such a new category in MarTech, Mike, I'm just going to read this definition and then I'm going to kind of ask you what you're seeing from clients as well. Because a lot of times you guys are managing the marketing databases or data and identity for clients, and they may have an EDW or other components within their enterprise, and they're asking why? Is this the next thing? If DMPs are going away, is CDPs real? But a CDP Institute says a customer data platform simply is a packaged software that creates a persistent unified customer database that is accessible to other systems. So you shared a couple things like integrations in those areas. So, but as an emerging MarTech category, the definition, in my opinion, is very broad. And with so many companies coming from so many different areas, like Treasury Data was a data platform, and we have others that were tag managers or analytic platforms now touting they have a CDP, as well as the marketing clouds who are building their CDP. If we go through that, it's to me made a very complicated process for evaluating that. Can you share some of your client discussion or examples of that evaluation process? Because each one may have better features or functions based on use cases, but maybe just give a few examples.
Absolutely. So, you know, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the problem, Steve, is that, you know, there are, I think, roughly 100 plus CDPs in the market today. And they all come from different backgrounds or perspectives, right? So some of them are tag management companies. Some of them, you know, come from data management, campaign management, analytics. You know, I think our industry and even the CDP Institute have trouble kind of getting a handle on all the different capabilities available out there with CDPs. So we do see our clients struggling tremendously when they decide to buy a CDP. And so it really comes back to helping them clarify what are their use cases they're trying to solve, you know, what are the business problems and outcomes they're wanting to achieve, and just taking a step back and thinking about thinking about the problem from that perspective and finding, the best tool for the job. To your point, in the definition that these are software, ultimately speaks to the fact that, they provide capabilities that are extremely valuable in your MarTech, AdTech stack. But like any other software, doing the due diligence up front, understanding what you're trying to accomplish or what you need to accomplish, understanding how it fits into your current stack is critical. And having a data strategy underneath that is absolutely critical, right? So, in our industry, there's a term garbage in, garbage out. That's been around since before I was doing this, which is a long time. And it still holds true, right? It's CDPs, DMPs, CRMs, EDW, any platform only performs as well as you plan for it in your current stack and as good as the data you can make feeding into it. And so when we get into situations that we've had with clients where, they've got 5, 6, 7 different CDPs they're considering, but honestly, they have different strengths and weaknesses, but they're finalists in an RFP, for example, that's a pretty good indicator usually that they need to take a step back and maybe do a little additional due diligence around what they're trying to accomplish to make sure that they, purchase the right platform to solve the problem for the solutions they have in front of them and what they're trying to accomplish.
It's a great point. So I'm going to share a little insight for everyone here. What I'm seeing in the market currently, which is fantastic, is very similar to what you're talking about, Mike, is brands are beginning to actually create demo scenarios of their use cases and actually making the CDP vendors actually show the functionality and features, right? To confirm, like the old day, traditional day of answer these 400 questions, can you do this, can you do this, are going away. And they want to say, hey, this is my use case. I need the data to go here. I need this to be triggered like this. I need real time here. Show me, right? And that's really, really cool to me, is that the brand knows what they're trying to solve for. They know they know their customers, and they're actually putting that at the forefront and figuring it out. It's not just plug-in tech, but it's what data do we need, where do we have to send it, and what's the outcome to give the best customer experience. And I think that is, a really quick change in the past few months that I'm seeing because the broadness of the CDP landscape, right? I think that's a good way for people to do a quick evaluation and confirm that what they're going to buy in the long term.
I mean, you hit on a really important thing here about CDPs is that, the evolution of technology has come a long way, right? So if you think back to the CRM database days, they were generally relational. They had a limited number of types of data flowing into them. Certainly not the digital data we have today and a lot of the schemaless need that we have. Being able to demo, though, is just an incredible advantage to clients to actually, put the technology they're considering through the paces here to make sure it's actually going to fulfill what they want to do. The one caution is that, don't be distracted by a lot of the flash, right? Sometimes,
the sexy UI, I call it, Mike, the sexy UI. It looks awesome and flashy like a Slack channel, but underneath it may not be actually performing. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Right. I mean, you definitely want to see the demo, but do dig under or use a partner to dig under just a little bit to make sure that, it's got a strong core to do the things you need to do. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a fantastic advantage to our clients today to be able to actually, put these tools through their paces and kind of see what they want,
Yeah.
to
So,
life.
and I think the interesting part of why I think CDPs are starting to do is, we look at this slide, it kind of shows not only why the evolution of tech or certain parts, but what happened, at least I see when we're with brands, is they have a social media or digital media or social channel. They have a search, someone who focuses on SEO within the marketing department. They have the email, people focus on email. And all of a sudden you're realizing they're even creating silos within the data world, within the marketing department in a brand, right? So I can see how that evolution happened, that all the data started living in different areas and why it's so important to bring it connected. But I think something we've also probably seen is, with the evolution, I think that's where you're going with the software and CDPs, the evolution of the cloud infrastructure allowed for those opportunities that data could be at scale, right? Platforms could be scaled and relational and old school databases kind of, still have an importance, but here gave the flexibility and scale. And so we also see that a lot of enterprises, right, brands saying, hey, I want to say we own our enterprise view of the customer. And what I've seen in that perspective is it may solve for enterprise use cases. So maybe they're pushing data to the warehouse or their ERP system or other things, call center, that may be very valuable. But the challenge I've seen and what we're hearing as well is the data lake doesn't allow a marketer to have the marketing view of the customer or the channels or the integrations, the activation. So I think that's another interesting part of, even when brands and tech and IT internally, yes, it's great, you can build the data and you can bring it at scale, but do you have all the components to actually map data to an identity and customer profile and then activate on it? So maybe just share a little bit of what you've seen in that space as well. And then we'll kind of talk about our point of view of connecting first, second, third party, as well as enhancing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about today versus 20, even 10 years ago, right? I mean, not only is there more data out there to collect, there's more tools to do it. And the language that we use as an industry is often very confusing. We use a lot of the same terms, but the context isn't necessarily the same. So data lakes, are a good example where they had a similar sort of buzz about them with our clients and in the industry. And, what I've seen often happen with clients that I've worked with is they'll stand up a data lake as an evolution of the enterprise data warehouse, right? And why did they go that way? They need a way to, bring data in schemaless. They need a way to handle, truly anonymous and semi-structured data. But collecting it's only half the problem, right? Making it actionable is really where you get the business value out of it. So, if you stand up a data lake without understanding, what use cases you want to enable, and in many cases, what tools you want to put on top of that to enable those use cases, it's really going to just be a huge place to dump data that you lose track of or are not able to actually action on. And so that's where, I see CDPs and other marketing tools have value, right? You need to really understand where they play in the ecosystem, what you're trying to accomplish, and using tools like data lakes underneath them to kind of help collect that data, but then make it something actionable. And, one of the things, Steve, on the silos, we often talk about data silos, right? But, there's application silos being created. And that's because almost any tool you buy today is going to have some sort of data management underneath it. You really need a strategy on how to connect these tools. So CDPs offer that integration out of the box, but you need to think about what data you need from those integrations and what data you need to push, and how are you trying to bring all this together. So it's an important point, and it's actually gotten worse in my experience. So I go to clients today who are struggling to bring all this data they're collecting together. They don't have a collection problem; they have a problem connecting the data with a cohesive data strategy and governance in a privacy compliant environment in today's world, and then making it actionable to solve their business problems, right? And so, that's kind of where we are.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So we're going to move to a slide that a lot of Axiom friends on this call, I'm assuming, as well as my treasure data friends. So hello to all of you. Have definitely seen before, but it just shows a great setup of where this goes. And what I do also want to kick off as we get further down this slide is the reason we're doing this webinar, besides I like Mike and he's amazing, and we like to brainstorm, and we do this literally as fire pit at his home. We both live in Colorado, 20 minutes away, but due to COVID, and health and safety reasons, we're still in our homes today. But wanted to share a little bit of kind of the point of view as we talk about now the data platforms, but what about the customer, the profile? What does it really look like? How can we enhance it? What is hygiene or data? Why are those things important? And I'm going to share some predictions of what I think and that Mike and I have been kind of working on as well. But this is kicking off our partnership for Axiom and Treasure Data. So just so you all know, in the market, we're looking to be able to integrate identity and data within the CDP, and it'll be one of my predictions of what you're going to see in the future coming up as well. So excited about our partnership, and thank you, Mike, for kicking it off today. As we moved here, we kind of talked about it, Mike. When you talk about all those silos, that same view of that customer could be in those silos or different identifiers or anonymous data. But you can see like those silos that you talked about are applications, right? We can have an app, we can have a website, we can have these other areas where data is living or collected, but it's still a place where the interaction is happening, interactivity between the customer and the brand. And a lot of this, you think deterministically you could do it because they may give you some PII or they may give you some indicators like an email, but are you able to take all those disparate systems and bring it back to here? So our evolution or our setup here for Axiom and Treasure Data is talking about the true view of the customer is being able to take, number one, all the first party data across the enterprise and applications. And the second kind of phase, and this is more of a CPG beverage company world, we also use this for automotive, where you'd see maybe Kelley Blue Book or Auto Trader. But think of the ecosystem that you live in, any vertical, whether it's financial service or insurance, places where the consumers are not necessarily looking or researching your brand, right? What if we could connect that story of how they even came to you before they came to their website, right? And so that customer journey can look so different across those verticals, and it can be very dynamic, meaning it can be very short in retail, or it can be very long in auto of weeks at a time before they actually transact during their research phase. And then we talk about the thing here, and we're gonna go deep here, Mike, because third-party data, two things, and I'm gonna let you talk about it more, but when we talk about integrating third-party data, that is gonna be all the social platforms. It is gonna be any of the tags, media tags, any of that advertising. But the real one thing I wanna talk about now is what about enhancing data with third-party data, like Axiom, Epsilon, Experian, other great providers here. And maybe, Mike, just share a little bit of, what we're seeing in this view, because third party, when we use the term, it sounds or could be construed as dirty word, right? But all it means, and if it's done ethically and correctly, it's going to be all the insights about who I am. So I'm Steve Letourneau. I already told you I lived in Colorado, and I can give you my phone number, and I'm giving you basic PII. But if I begin to have leverage data of that, I live in Colorado and I like to snowboard and I do these other activities, now I begin to paint a real picture of who I am and what does that do for creating audiences or creating other segments within your activations. So Mike, maybe just share a little bit of your POV on identity and data enhancement in this circle when brands are doing it. Because whether you have a data lake, whether you had a CRM, we'll keep the DMP out, or you have a CDP, to me, this is the real evolution. As cookies go away, you've already talked about it. This is the next stake, where identity was very important here, and the direct mail, right? Because you didn't waste your dollars sending it the wrong address. Digital, everyone was just kind of figuring out it's going the right channels. But now if we're bringing it all together, maybe talk about identity graphs and the view of data enhancement from Axiom's point of view.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. And I think, if you think of first-party data just simply as data you're collecting yourself, second-party being data that you're working with a partner to collect, and third-party data kind of coming from an external vendor or a data aggregator like Axiom or Experian or some of the others in the market. Each has its value, right? And we talked a little bit earlier about really needing all types of data to come together to get that true view of the customer. From from an enhancement perspective, and one of the things I'm hearing a lot from clients is, oh, stay away from third-party data, right? And I think there's a little bit of conflating of terms in the sense that third-party cookies, being something that may not be available, first-party cookies will be. So, putting a cookie on your website, right? There's no indications those will be blocked. So just trying to kind of clarify what we're collecting, right? So third-party cookies and third-party data that's not ethically sourced, you see today in the marketplace a tremendous amount of third-party data becoming available. You really need to be careful to ensure that data has been collected ethically. Axiom has been doing this for 50 years, so we have a very strong ethics practice, as do a lot of the other major vendors in this space. So it's important to know, that distinction. Third-party data as enhancement to a consumer profile inside your CDP is extremely powerful, right? And that's one of the keys to the power of the relationship we're developing here with Dillium is, they're collecting that first-party data they observe based on your events, behaviors, or loading offline CRM data. But where third-party data can come into play here is really understanding the person behind that profile. So their likes, their dislikes, their demographics, their propensities, again, all ethically collected and presented in a way that is privacy compliant and usable in the marketplace. And and it comes with it, typically like with Axiom, it also comes with advice on how to use it and how not to use it so that, you're creating those experiences that are captivating and engaging, but not straying into the realm of creepy, right? So, again, it goes back to just because you have the data doesn't mean you have to use it or should use it in every case. But, in terms of the consumer profile, just having that rich, robust additional data to tag into that profile helps with things like personalization, targeting, just all sorts of use cases open up and become much more relevant to that person. Suppressions, right? I mean, you can do a lot of things here with third-party data. So it's absolutely an extreme value add. On the identity side, in talking about the silos, it really comes down to how do you connect data across applications and silos. And each of these silos and applications has their own view of identity. And they also have basic ways they store data that may differ. So a good example is one system may store Steve Letourneau as one field, right, concatenated, and another may split it out first name, last name, right? So there's a little bit of ETL or standardization that needs to happen to kind of bring those together. So, the way we help power identity in a CDP, if you think about the way CDPs approach identity, they're typically using a process called stitching. And what that is they're essentially direct matching things like hashed emails or hashed cookie IDs or hashed PII, which is, extremely valuable. But, being able to also then extend that into the use of a historical third-party identity graph, right? Or, adding in client-specific rules, all of that really lends itself to a very powerful identity graph that's usable by the enterprise, which informs the CDP, and by the way, is informed by the CDP, right? Because what the CDP is collecting from an identity perspective is also extremely valuable to that brand graph. And so, together, in that perspective, the power of the CDP plus, doing a very robust identity brand graph becomes really useful, right, Steve?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd actually talk about two examples. We're working with Axiom where a client, who very good clients of ours, had consultants come in recognizing there was deduplication because there was multiple actual second-party data coming in. And one of the areas they had asked for is, can you guys do hygiene, and can you provide basic demographic? Can you make sure it's the best address? Can you make sure it's this? And so we've already made those connections through with Axiom as well with our own clients in the CDP. So we're seeing it happening based on, again, use cases that are driven like that, and seeing enhancement or append. So but I do want to see the next evolution of the data enhancement of third party, the demographic and psychographic and behavioral data as well, because I've seen the power of what it does when you're creating models or audiences to target. When you have that level, you can really see the lift compared to just sending a name and an address and not knowing it's the right person, right? And I think that's the big deal of what you're trying to do, especially if you think about a CDP, Mike. We talk about best action or next best product, which we work on at Treasure Data. If we don't have the right person really mapped to it, even though we have all this data and we're not mapping that right product because it's actually the wife, not the husband in the household, because it's device ID, that's going to look pretty embarrassing when you're sending those wrong things. And I'm sure many of you have gotten that, where I've signed up at Nordstrom Rack and next thing you know, I'm getting women's boots in my email. And I'm like, my name's Steve. I don't know how you did that. Don't get me wrong, they're really cool boots, but that just wasn't going to fit my style.
Yeah, Steve, I think, you bring up a good point, right, in terms of being relevant and the cost of maybe mispersonalizing things, right? And so getting identity is core to getting this right. I always like to say you can't effectively personalize unless you can recognize who it is you're talking to, right, on some level. The scenario you described is absolutely a way, us partnering together can power better experiences, because one of the things that we can bring to the intelligence of your CDP is householding, right? And so understanding, who might be in that household and, some things around, your behaviors and combining that with what you're collecting, your behaviors, it helps us maybe differentiate between you and your significant other, for example, within a household, even though you may be sharing a device.
So, Mike, we're going to take the last, several minutes here. We got just under 10 here. I'm going to give Steve's predictions based on a lot of discussions you are having. And you get 1 minute to hit the answer, and then I move to the next one, because we're going to go one by one. There's just four, and we kind of hit some here. But so one of the areas that I feel like CDPs, so we talk about marketing tech stacks and different layers and what's out there and applications. One of the big things I see going away in the near future is CDPs will be replacing campaign tools. Places where the brand CRM agencies were segmenting and building audiences on a marketing database or off the CRM, I believe CDPs will be and replace them very soon. Mike, 1 minute.
Yeah, okay. I would agree, Steve. I think traditional campaign tools, will still have value, but one of the things about CDPs is the ability to actually extend that targeting and segmentation, right there where the customer is interacting. And then also the pre-built integrations and the ability to distribute audiences, absolutely. There's a lot of intriguing use cases that open up by using a CDP tool versus a campaign tool.
Mike, you did that in 30 seconds. That was awesome. Well done. So Steve's second prediction. We already saw it up on the evolution. I think you see where I'm going. CDPs replace DMPs for onboarding to DSPs and social channels. We're already doing it. But I do believe there could be something big, even on when we talk about programmatic or media, which I know you guys are holding companies with IPG and a public group. So there's a lot of media. I do think there's that play that the CDPs, where first-party data could live, you could harness HBAs, high-value audiences, create segments, seeds, and push to the digital ecosystem. 1 minute, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about...
That was your timer.
Wow, that wasn't a minute.
No, I know. Go.
I'm just messing with you. That if you think about third-party cookies being blocked and being able to advertise on third-party sites being a bit more challenging in the future, right? Being able to hit addressable media is becoming more and more important. Those are broad networks where you can get one-to-one personalized targeting to individuals using your, online and offline data, right? And CDPs absolutely have a great play in that, just because, as mentioned before, they're very well integrated typically into both the MarTech and AdTech stack. So being able to distribute those audiences directly into those networks is going, I think, to be an avenue for achieving one-to-one personalization in the future. And today,
awesome.
Really.
Awesome. So here's my other one, and this one, it's a twofold, because I think it kind of goes back to a DMP, but not necessarily the DMP as an onboarder, but as a provider of audiences. So I believe identity and data, we've already shared, enhancement will be integrated into CDPs. Most CDPs do not have their own identity graph or their own built on consumers or global. So I think that is one thing I see happening. And upon that is third-party connectors. So picture an API where within the CDP, we create a segment, we create a workflow, and we say, this is our target audience. We push that to Acxiom or another partner that has it. They provide a list of, let's say, the top 30 percentile of people that look like that in the US. That data is integrated back into the CDP and then activated on. And you could keep them as their own segment. You could do A/B testing. You could do some really cool stuff. I think that is going to happen in the next, hopefully, year and a half. Because depending how fast the partnership is, I want that to happen even faster.
Yeah, we do too, Steve. I think that, as a industry or a category within our industry, CDPs are relatively newer, right? But they're here to stay. Gardner Forrester would agree with that statement as well. And the reason being is that they're really managing your most valuable asset, your first-party data, whether it's customer or even B2B, right? And, I do think in terms of maturity, being able to increase the ability to do identity enhancement, and ensuring that the CDP has the fundamentals in place of data management, which is, upfront, making sure you have clean quality data. It's the relationships are linked and defined, beyond just, what it knows, right? And then enhancing that profile makes it an extremely powerful application. And that's exactly why we're partnering.
Awesome. Well done. And then here's one that's more vertical focused. And so this one that I've just seen probably in the last month and a half, obviously probably accelerated by COVID. But for me, CPG is moving towards a D2C model, direct to consumer, accelerated by COVID. And what do I mean by that? Never before were we ever open to get anything and everything directly to our home, right? Amazon opened the door. But I'm just going to pick a large CPG food, and so not beverage, food, and where you're able to now go on their website, pick a product, use their channel, so they're using their channel partner within your zip code and being able to transact, provide their data, and then bring the product to your house from that channel. So, and when I say channel, I'm talking the big retail box stores, right? So I just think what's phenomenal in a world that we lived in for so long at Acxiom and now Treasure Data, first-party data was always the big brands, big retailers where they're collecting data because they have that one-to-one. CPGs never really had the one-to-one because they had the channel issue or conflict. I want to say it's a conflict, just the way the business model is set up. So they never able to collect that first-party data, and I feel they're moving that way. So that's something really cool, and I have multiple demos coming up, and it's just a big stir in that world and market. So, Mike, I'm not sure if you have much on that, but no. I think D2C can, and we can see the same with dealers and auto as well, right? Like direct to your house test drive, direct to your house, like almost contactless auto sales as well. But go for it.
Yeah, no, I just will agree with you, Steve. I think the CPGs we've worked with tend to, have to deal historically with modeled data, right? Because they don't have access to that first party data and the customer data. And again, there's a lot of reasons for that. The most basic being that, for example, the retailer doesn't want to provide the CPG their client list directly. So, being able to do that for CPGs, I think, is an exciting thing that is emerging largely because of COVID and some of the direct consumer activity that they have access to. So, I guess out of every challenge, there's an opportunity, as they say, right? I think it's an exciting use case that I look forward to exploring.
Awesome. So, Siobhan, are you going to jump in? I think we nailed that 45 minutes.
Sorry about that, Mike. You just broke up a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
you're
yes.
breaking up, Steve. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So, yes, it is now time for us to hear from you, our audience. We would love to get your questions at this point, so please use the Q&A module at the right-hand side of your browser and ask Steve or Mike any questions that you have. And thank you, both of you. That was a really interesting conversation. So I am going to bring you in, Mike, for this first question, and then Steve, jump in if you have any thoughts on it. At one point during the conversation, it was mentioned media convergence came up, and I was hoping that you could elaborate a little bit more about that phenomena.
Yeah, and I don't know, Steve, if you want to jump in on this one first.
I'll let you do it. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think the question is around the power of addressable and media in the future. I hope I'm kind of following the question correctly. If not, please feel free to clarify. I think from a perspective of publisher data or publisher networks and media outlets, there's a tremendous amount of untapped value in those, right, in terms of one-to-one data. So whether it's addressable TV or, other avenues of getting your message into those networks direct to the consumer, what I think we were speaking to is, being able to upload your data from a CDP, for example, your audiences, and distribute them not just to your traditional ESP or even cut files for a mail shop to deliver offline, but then to also go direct into different publishers to be able to actually target them without having to use an intermediary.
Yeah, Mike, we're seeing similar. Hopefully the mic's better. Is that good?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right, perfect. Yeah, my earpods started dying, so I was going to switch, and I just went back to it. I think we got enough time. I would say the same on media. We're seeing some of those use cases where we've set up a CDP and the agencies come in. And as I said, kind of using those segments is kind of why I talk about third-party connectors and audiences being brought into the CDP. So there could be ways that, maybe like a DMP, the first-party data could live in the CDP just for media, as well as any third-party prospect data as well. And that's one thing that for sure I think we're going to see, because I think agencies are looking, as cookies going away, what are they going to do for media? And they need more value in that first-party data with the brand. So I think there's definitely going to be a strategy, whether with the Convergence exact, I'm not sure, but I think the CDP could be where that activation happens.
Yeah, one last thing on that, Steve, you kind of sparked something here. One of the trends definitely going on in media in the agency world is the expectation of measurement, right, and KPIs. So, I was with a client last year whose entire marketing organization was pivoting towards being measurable, right, and setting their budgets on that, which is an extreme challenge when a large part of their spend is in broadcast media. So,
yes.
You know, we often talk about the distribution of those audience into the network one-to-one, but then being able to see the effect of that through measurement is important. And so that's, you know, it's kind of a feedback loop, right, to see how you're doing. So that's, I think,
I think you could then, Mike, and that's a great point, because I think you could get tighter with the audiences and saying, where do I distribute these audiences based on their channel preference, right? I think to your point, even if it's mass media, there should only be a portion of that audience that maybe even is on TV. I'm not on TV, I don't have cable, so don't waste your time putting me in the audience to distribute. And the same with digital. And so I think that that's another opportunity as well to optimize their spend.
That's right. That's right. And to really go after what you referenced before, Steve, high value audiences. So really taking your spend and pointing it towards those customers that you either through AI or modeling or however you got there, understanding you're probably going to have the most impact with them, right? And move the needle the most, so you don't waste those dollars where they're not needed or impactful.
Perfect.
Great. So we've got we do have one, and this one I'm going to start with you, Steve. This is from Bonnie, and she wants to know, how do you get the master data team to understand you need a CDP, since master data management thinks they own customer data?
That is a great question, and I think Mike was talking about it. Bonnie, great question. I think that, you know, what we're seeing, or I've seen, is CDP committees, right, or places where, and you're going down the right path. This is truly, at least at our play, we are a data platform, so you can have analytics and data living in it about the customer, as well as the activation side for the marketers. But you're exactly right. You need the IT department, you need the data team, the science, the data governance team, right? I think this convergence of what's happened that we talked about earlier in the slides has then merged, right? Even with a CMO being friends with the CTO, right? Because the only way this all works is if everyone understands the benefit. I think the number one is bringing what I talked about, the customer centric. But the challenges are definitely there. People want to believe that they want to own the data, which you always own the data, whether it's in a third-party software, it's your data, first-party data. But I do feel like there are challenges of people wanting stuff on-prem or on-premise with their own databases, their own data warehouses. What I would say is the CDP doesn't replace that. So CDP could sit on top and become that activation layer, and we could then create those connections. So I think the best way is bringing in thought leaders to come in and help with that. One of the best ways that I love is whiteboarding. So getting up and whiteboarding what we're doing, what are their challenges of bringing in a new application or software on top of their data, and gently challenging, of course, but working through that. And the second part is keeping the customer. I think the first one is keeping the customer, getting that team together, and I'd say the third is looking at use cases that derive why you need a CDP.
Yeah,
Mike?
I might add a little to that too. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think, and it is a very important question. It kind of goes back to the discussion around collection versus making the data actionable, right? So MDMs, yes, true, they're collecting customer data, but they're not really taking that data and making it actionable for in-the-moment marketing, for example, or personalization. So we use them as sources into the data management platforms that we host or CDPs, but they're not really tuned or optimized for marketing use cases. And, I have seen in the past clients, they're multi-domain platforms, right? They're typically there to hold product information, service information, you name it. The depth to which that is implemented at a client's is up to them, essentially. But customer domain is one domain. A lot of the data they collect is operational as well. And again, it's just not really directly actionable for marketing.
Yeah, and I'd say the last thing is, Bonnie, you can invite Mike and Steve to come talk and share and work with you to help you get that done. That's our favorite thing to do. I like talking to Mike, but I actually love talking to clients and partners more. Sorry, Mike, but I do it with you.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
You're all set there, Bonnie. So we've got quite a few more questions for you, and I'm going to try and get to as many of these as possible. The next one is from Mark, and his question is, do CDPs struggle or thrive with in-the-moment touches or media personalization across devices? Who'd like to start with that one?
Steve, you want to grab that one?
Yeah. So the question was struggle, right, Siobhan? Do they struggle?
Do they struggle or thrive with in-the-moment touches or media personalization across devices?
Yeah, so I'd say, depending, again, always back to your use case, what is real time and when is it needed is number one, the question I'd say. So depending on website personalization, I'd say they thrive really well. And then some have what we call, I'll just bring Treasure Data, we have a funnel approach, so journey orchestration. As the customer moves and interacts with the brand, the next best action can happen, and it can be automated. So if those things are happening, it could go multi-channel, or it could push a media ad, or push something to Facebook, or an email. So in those real-time opportunities, they can be built in. I always evaluate what is real time and when do you really need it. So I'd say that they can thrive based on use case and based on the functionality of the CDP. So that's always what we talked about with Mike earlier. If you come up with some use cases, have the CDP vendors demo their capabilities in real time, meaning make them personalize the website as the profile is moving. So I hope that helps. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I only will add that, this is an area where with so many CDP vendors in the marketplace, you want to do some diligence around their real-time capabilities, right? Because not all CDPs can actually do true real-time if that's what you're looking for, and not all can necessarily even do audience management. They may come more from an analytics background, right? So this is where you really do have to clarify what you're trying to accomplish and make sure the CDP that you're wanting to do that with can actually achieve it. So, the true answer to your question is it depends on the CDP, right? So in some cases, yes, but in some cases, maybe not.
All right, gentlemen, we have quite a few more questions, but we've only got time for one more. So if I can just ask your quick thoughts on the following. This is from Paul. Please address how prospects, not existing customers, use cases can be implemented. And it's a two-parter, so as fast as you can with a two-parter. One, can the CDP totally take over the role of DMP? What can't it do? And we'll just start there, and then I'll throw out the second part.
You want to hit it, Mike, or you want me to?
Yeah, go for it. I'll tag on.
Yeah, so I'd say from a prospect perspective, I'm going to try to hit this fast. Prospects, in the CDP, you create segments. So if you own that prospect data, your own leads or events, that you own it, or you'd have third-party prospects, we would maintain them as their own segment within the CDP. So you'd have a master customer profile, and you could have a master lead or prospect profile that is separate from your customers and treated differently as well. So that's how we would handle prospects within there. Easily implemented based on a file extract, no big deal. And you could customize, as I said, the journey flow and workflows. On the DMP areas, I thought CDP couldn't do it because, as I said, some of them were frequency capping and others. If you have a flexible platform, Treasure Data, we can build a frequency cap, meaning how many times is that person touched? And I think that was one of the areas that I was like, a DMP can't do. The other thing is DSPs are already doing lookalikes. So if I send a CDP audience seed to a DSP, the DSP can do all the things that the DMP was doing anyway. So my point is, with the CDP and DSP connection, you could definitely, I think, replace the DMP totally. Mike? Refute me or agree?
I just, and real quickly, I know we're running out of time. On the prospect issue, that's one of the great things about Treasure Data is that they have a way to actually, handle prospects. Not all CDPs can do that. I mean, they're definitely originated as customer data platforms, right? And talking about, known customers. But, there are ways to do that within a platform like Treasure Data. That's pretty straightforward. On the DMP, I agree with what you said, Steve. I think that, we will likely see a convergence of DMP capabilities into CDPs over time, just because there is some overlap there in and need that they're fulfilling that I think CDPs will naturally be able to take over that role.
Awesome.
Excellent. Paul, we're going to get back to you on the second half of your question, and to everybody else who asked questions, we will follow up after the webinar. At this point, I will tell you that we have recorded the webinar, and a link to the on-demand video is going to be emailed to you in the next few business days. Thank you, Steve and Mike. I felt like I was there at the barbecue pit with both of you, listening in on your conversation.
That's how we wanted it to be.
Awesome.
Excellent. You worked. And thanks to Treasure Data for sponsoring today's event. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.